An estimated 2 billion people face barriers regarding accessibility to FMCG brands and products. Now, these barriers to engagement are particularly apparent within packaging and within point of sale. So this is a huge, huge challenge or opportunity, depending how you choose to look at it. So what can brands do to step up to this challenge? I'm Stephen McGuinness. I'm a writer, broadcaster, speaker, and I'm passionate about FMCG brand strategy. And today I'm lucky to have my facilitator hat on as we have a discussion on this huge topic. So for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to be talking to 3 leading experts on the topic of accessibility and design, and specifically around FMCG accessibility. So I'm joined by Mark Powell, who's the Strategic Accessibility Lead at the RNIB, Sam Waller, who's with the University of Cambridge Engineering Inclusivity Design Centre, and Gavin Greenhalgh, who's the Creative Director at Air Global. So thanks for being here. I'm going to ask each of you the same question, but without repeating the question, of course. So this is obviously an important challenge and opportunity around holistic accessibility, particularly in FMCG. Why has it remained unanswered or untackled for so long? And I'll go to Mark first.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. It's a really good question, and it's considering what we're talking about now, it's crazy that this has stood in place for such a long time. And God, I remember I've been told and shared recently that over 10 years ago RNIB tried to look at this space, and it was impossible to given the technology and what we had at the time, to really try to crack this. The Equality Act exempts packaging from being accessible, and I think this is all about awareness and real understanding of disability, and what's actually possible. Consumers have disabilities, and therefore we need to look at this even more seriously now. There's a real focus on disability and inclusion, and like I say, I think this is more about understanding consumers, understanding their needs, and really now driving forward with innovation, given all of the different advances that we've got at our disposal now, and putting them all together as part of the puzzle.
Okay, that's fantastic. And Sam, what's your perspective on that question?
Yeah, I might have to throw a curveball in at this point, because for me the challenge with accessibility is the word accessibility. From the start, the definition of it and the way that it's been used. If I talk to anybody about the fact that you work in accessibility, they think it's all about solutions for blind people, and it's all about solutions for people in wheelchairs. We've been using the word inclusive design, and the specific reason for that is because it's about the whole population. It's about all people. Now, if you ask people, if you try and measure the number of people who've got arthritis and about a disability associated with arthritis, for example, you'll get one number about how many people have arthritis. If you ask people whether they've got joint pain, you'll get another number. Now, joint pain's not a disability. That could be just getting old. It could be any number of things. But if you find out, does it mean you have difficulty opening a bleach bottle? Hell yes. Could that bleach bottle be better? Definitely. Do I have to have a disability before I'm interested in whether bleach bottles can be better designed? No, I don't think you do. And I would rather see, there's 2 options. Either we have to reframe accessibility to say accessibility is not about improving the access for people with disabilities, to change that to say accessibility is about improving the access for all people, regardless of whether they have any disabilities. And that would be one way to move forwards, to reframe what accessibility means. Or the other choice is to accept that accessibility is what it is, and it's got a particular purpose around, the focus on people with severe disabilities. But when we're talking about the big opportunities, to use words like inclusive design to reflect the opportunity for the entire population. And in terms of the opportunity, I've already mentioned joint pain. The other big one is age-related long-sightedness. And if we could just crack those two things, joint pain in the knuckles and age-related long-sightedness, for making packaging more easy to see and more easy to open, that would be huge.
Absolutely. That's an incredibly good point. I think that echoes some of the points that I know the Air Global guys have been talking about. So Gavin, from your creative and sort of strategic viewpoint, how does what Mark and Sam are saying gel with your efforts?
Yeah, I mean, it completely all ties together. But I think for me, there is a really big challenge out there. And the challenge is that we simply have to get to the point where inclusivity is no longer branded as an exclusive term. It has to be part of a natural design process. We have to kind of go through this kind of sort of system and have this kind of naturally built in without it feeling like it's an add-on or excuse me, it's something that feels almost overwhelming. And I think we have this, it's very sort of typical really. We have this kind of what we think we know attitude just within the sort of branding world, which actually prevents us from finding really simple solutions. The what we know attitude almost leads us to something overwhelming. It feels like the answer has to be really grand, really expensive, really innovative almost at times. And actually, by doing that, we can often overlook a much simpler process. Design always isn't about complication. Sometimes it's really, and for the most part, it's about simplifying the communication, whatever that form, whether that's the usability of a product or a vessel that the product's in, whether or not it's the way that we visualize or interpret the information on that pack itself. But yeah, we've got to get to the point where inclusivity is just part of a natural process and no longer an exclusivity.
That's a really, really good point. So what you're saying is it's about almost baking it into the design process as much as we would in our efforts to adhere to a brand standard or a category expectation or even an aesthetic. You wouldn't think twice about making that such an integral part that it's going to come through as a natural development of a piece of packaging or POS.
Yeah.
And that's a really good point. I'd like to open that up to Mark and Sam. Gavin made this point that when we think about accessibility, often it's thought in terms of this is a huge project that's going to cost a lot of money and take a long time. But are there some more sort of pragmatic solutions that can get put in place in terms of things like packaging or POS that don't necessarily need to be 5-year timelines and millions of dollars of investment that the brands could sort of get stuck into? In your experience, are there those sort of pragmatic wins that would help everybody? Sam?
Yeah, so the quickest win that we've been involved with is hero images for e-commerce images for shopping. You're on sort of shopping on a mobile app, and you've got these tiny thumbnail images for the packs. And we worked a lot with Unilever to improve those pack images. So saying instead of taking a photograph of the image, can we do something better than that and digitally create an image that's fit for purpose? Take only the details that people need to know what is the product, what does it do for me, how much of it do I get, who made it, just those critical pieces of information, supersize that, omit absolutely everything else, zoom in a little bit on the product if that helps. If it's something like ice cream, take the product out of the pack and actually show the ice cream so that people know what they're getting. And obviously e-commerce space moves really fast. People change these images all the time. And within a few months, you've got some new images up. People are split testing this image versus that image, right? That's the better one. Boom, changed. So that is really, really fast paced. In terms of your more general question, there's an interesting link now between the e-commerce space, where most of the purchasing decisions are actually made. Before you walk into the store, you've already done the research, check this versus the other, and then the actual physical pack. And what we haven't seen yet is physical packs being designed so that they work in e-commerce. Now, the classic thing where this hits more than anything is that nearly every supermarket shelf is full of stuff that's tall and thin. For some reason, people like tall in their products, and the tool feels like big in terms of when you look at it on a supermarket shelf. So tall and thin is kind of the way to go for dense packing in supermarket shelves. Of course, every e-commerce site gives images that are square, and as you put something tall and thin in something that's square, you can't see anything. And we'd love to see it, or it's almost, is this going to lead a shift into the way people package and shape and distribute products so that they're actually more square shaped, so that when you then put them online, they actually work better? And will we see features on the physical pack that have been intended to be highlighted within the e-commerce image? So it's not just that the e-commerce image is an afterthought, but actually the two have gone hand in hand. How does this look digitally, and how does it look physically, and how can those two things, synergy? In terms of your other point on, does it need to take longer? Does it need to cost more? We had a huge insight with the chocolates thing when people were finding how hard these tray-based chocolates were, to get out. You just couldn't get your fingers around the chocolates to get them out. And one of the guy goes, well, why don't we put a recess in so that we can get the fingers can actually get around the product? And like, this is a vacuum formed tray, we can do anything we want. Why aren't we putting these recesses in? And you suddenly get that light bulb moment, like, why haven't we been doing this? This is so obvious. It doesn't cost any more. It doesn't take any longer. It's just obviously the thing to do. As soon as you've got that mindset on to be thinking about designing for the whole population, or design for your future self, or design for, other people, you immediately have these light bulb moments. Why is this stuff zero contrast? It's barely readable. I've seen even some packaging where they highlight the words that they want you to read, but actually in trying to highlight it, they let the contrast of it. So actually the single word they're trying to draw you to is the one word you can't see. And you're like, why on earth is this still happening? And I say it's not rocket science. It's not that difficult. Once you've got the right hat on, these innovations and better ways of doing things just literally fall out. And you start questioning. The question then is, why haven't we realized this sooner?
Well, and that's a really good question. So, to Mark, from your point of view, are there these sort of, I think we need to be pragmatic about this. What are the pragmatic wins from your point of view? Because this is a lived experience for you rather than a hypothetical one for us. What is it that could be done quickly and simply, just as Sam says, from your point of view?
Yeah, totally. And I completely agree with the guys in what they've said. And from my perspective, like taking the information side of this and providing information in an accessible way. I'm 31, and in all the time that I've been alive, I've never been able to see packaging. I've never been able to. I can associate with different brands because the shapes of the logo, the different colors on the packaging. I can, I know what it is, but there's crucial information on packaging. When we consider allergens, when we consider nutrition, even now we've all got a responsibility, to recycle. And there's many a times where, I've personally, I've thrown something away because I don't know if it's recyclable or not. But then just from that perspective, I want to play my part. But then when we get into some of that, when we talk about safety and when we get into some of that crucial information, the blind people are like everybody else. We want to look after ourselves. We also, there are ways now that you can get that level of information across. Some industries have looked at Braille, and yes, Braille is really useful to those that read it. But Braille is 10% of blind people read Braille, but when we look at Braille as a way to get that level of information across everything that's on that box, brands haven't got the real estate to put all of that information in Braille. And equally, it's like I say, there's a small proportion of blind and partially sighted people who actually read Braille. So, what can we do? And we've demonstrated that using something called the NaviLens code, which is the next generation of QR code that can relay all of that information to somebody's smartphone from a distance. in an accessible format. And you know, whether that's audio, whether that's improving the visuals on your smart device, you take control of that. And you know, for the first time, we were able to demonstrate what this could look like and how this could shape up using such a simple way, something really, you know, that you guys do all the time, which is a simple artwork change on a box. That gave me the freedom to get all that information.
That's phenomenal. So yeah, that ties quite nicely into Gavin. So Gavin, you led that project with the Navilens integration into the cereal brand, which I think might have been something of the kickstart of this journey. But the same question for you, from what you've been seeing in the development of this, what are those immediate wins that are becoming apparent to you that now you've seen, you know, the insights behind this?
Well, again, I think the pragmatic solution is relatively simple. For as long as we can all remember, when we kind of design products and packs, we design in an environment that suits the person looking at the screen at the particular time. Mark has done a great job, actually, kind of really bringing to light the fact that what packaging means to him. Now, actually, we don't think of packaging as something that you can't see. We think of it as something that pretty much kind of everyone can see. And we almost then, our naivety allows us then to try and think that we've got to put everything on the pack. We've got to be everything to every single person. But actually, we can be much more specific and much more targeted with the types of communications that we put on the packs, or actually the technology that goes on the pack. So, for example, if somebody has no sight whatsoever, then actually we know that we need to introduce a level of technology onto the pack, and the Navilens is an excellent piece of technology that can really then create a piece of engagement with an audience that we were kind of never really taken into consideration. Or if we did take it into consideration, we took it into consideration with a naivety. We thought that, oh, well, actually, they must be able to read Braille, so let's put Braille on the pack. It's only until we start talking to the right types of focus groups, people who have impairments or disabilities, that we start to really truly find out what the effects are. So the pragmatic solutions are simply to put ourselves in the position of the user, of the consumer, interact and try and experience with the product in the same way, and then understand what the information is that we then get back, because then that will actually change the way that we design the packs moving forward. What we don't want to happen is we don't want to walk into the supermarket and have a sea of white packs with 60-point text that all look exactly the same, that contrast really well, and suddenly brands lose their own personality as well, because they've all of a sudden become the same. It's just really about making sure that we kind of are much more specific and more careful in how we utilize those pieces of communication. A prime example of that, and again, it's about a usability aspect, is it was only recently I was in the supermarket and there was an old person in the supermarket. They must have been about 5'2", and they were asking me, and I'm not the tallest person in the world, to get something off the top shelf. And when I kind of reached it down, it was a product really that was aimed at someone of a particular age, and I just thought to myself, why would you even put that on the top shelf? Why would you exclude your consumer or your user by putting it in a place that they just can't utilize the product? And it's the same with any kind of impairment or any kind of disability. We have to truly understand what are the key fundamentals that are required and design around that. We don't have to feel like it's an overwhelming situation where we have to put everything on the pack, which in turn creates an abundance of noise. We just need to kind of declutter and communicate in a much simpler way.
Can I just build on that for a second? It can go a little bit further than even what you were saying, because I mean, e-commerce is the fastest growth there is, and again, people are taking products that have been designed for an in-store experience and then selling them online. But I'm wondering when people are going to reimagining what the purpose of packaging is, because you've talked about the nutritional information and what needs to go on the pack. But if you take the e-commerce experience, a lot of that's digital. You know, you can shop with filters on for your allergies, so you just don't even see products that have got particular allergies. The nutritional information, the up to a point, the recycling information. You know, if we can reimagine what the purpose of packaging is based on the e-commerce experience, there's no top shelf anymore. You know, there's a whole load of stuff. One of the really big things is security. You know, like the actual need to make products impossible to get into, so people can't open them up in store and nick them. You know, there were toothbrushes that were so valuable they put them in almost an armor-plated casing that you actually couldn't open. And then, but with an e-commerce experience, that security issue goes away. So all of a sudden, stuff can be in brown boxes. And when you look at, again, environmental considerations around bright soy inks, you know, these things are all designed to capture attention in the store. Whereas, the bright petrochemical-based inks that are hard to recycle. But if once you work on the principle that once it's arrived at your door, it's already sold, you can reimagining packaging in a different way to suit the home use, to suit the opening, to suit the recycling. You know, everything can be different. And I just really wanted to sort of pose that opportunity. When are we going to see that?
Can I just circle us back around on that? That's a really good point. We tend within the branding and design industry, particularly, you know, for the large FMCGs, look at and focus on the point of purchase. What's happening in store? What's happening, whether that's a virtual store or a real store. We tend not necessarily spend as much time focusing on the point of use. Now, as much as we can look at integrating things like NaviLens and other QR codes and offer the point of purchase, you're rarely going to take your phone into the shower with you. So when we're looking in terms of their usability, so we're thinking about, you know, not just visual impairment, but also literacy levels or cognitive levels. So the child going underneath the kitchen sink, looking at what's in there, what's harmful, what's not. Somebody visually impaired or somebody with soap in their eyes, trying to distinguish between the conditioner, the shampoo, and the shower gel. There's also, I think, that point of use, accessibility, inclusiveness that maybe we kind of jump past. Mark, you're nodding there. Is that something that, are we focusing purely on the wrong area or just ignoring one?
I mean, this, as we've heard clearly on this call, you know, there's so many different ways of really packaging this up, to excuse the pun. But you know, we've got to really put a flag in the sand here, you know, and you know, decide, you know, on things that we can do now. You know, there's some of those quick wins that can be done, and then there are, you know, many different angle to this in terms of that we could innovate on, you know, and get better as we go along. You know, yes, I've talked about the information side, you know, and that crucial information to some people that's on that box that people can't read or access or know that's even there. But, you know, and there's great examples of, you know, Procter & Gamble with the, you know, utilizing tactile on herbal essence bottles. And, you know, when you've got soap in your eyes, like you've just said, and you're in the shower, you know, you can determine what's conditioner and what shampoo. That's what they did. Now there's space to have both, you know, on, you know, to understand whether, you know, this product is vegan, but then when I've got it in the shower, I then, you know, can understand what that is based on the tactility. So, you know, I think, and we talked about this yesterday, there is a flag in the sand here, which we can, you know, let's take on certain aspects of packaging and then go on a journey to innovate and improve as we, you know, as we go along. But information, you know, which I've been, you know, really, you know, holding a flag up about, you know, in the last couple of years, you know, is crucial, and let's then keep building.
Okay, so last question for the three of you. If you could put a huge billboard outside of the head offices of Mondelez, Diageo, Danone, Unilever, P&G, all these big guys, if you could put the billboard outside their office that said one sentence for the marketeers coming in and out of those doors, what would you say to them? Sam?
It's one sentence: design for your future selves. That's it. Do that. Don't design for yourself, design for your future self.
Similar, actually. My thing would just be literally everyone at some point in their lives will need a solution based on and inclusive needs. So don't exclude your future self by ignoring the simple steps right now.
Yeah, I think they're great, and I think to try and think of something differently, I'd probably go for see packaging differently. You know, that's it for me. And if you look at it through the lens of different needs and disabilities, if you see your packaging differently, you know, you will get it right for your consumers.
Brilliantly, and that's a great point to sum this up. Gavin, Sam, Mark, thank you very, very much for your time. This has been absolutely phenomenal. We'll be sharing this with our contacts and putting it to our social media, and there are links on those if anybody wants to get in touch with you directly. Thanks very much for your time. Thanks for fitting us in on a busy Friday, and look forward to chatting to you and working with you again real soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers, guys.